We'll call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the very first thing, or the second thing on our agenda, letter B, is the motion of approval for the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda with one change, and that is to remove the approval of the 2/13/19 City Council meeting minutes because under number 10, the Rice Creek Snowmobile Trail Association request, I think the motion that was passed refers to a permanent trail alignment, which I don't think is the correct wording, so I just thought we could take that out and correct that part of our minutes.
I have no problem with that. Do we have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion carries with the removal of number 4.
3.
Letter C on our agenda is the question and motion from Anoka County. Joe McPherson is here to make a presentation to us. It's pages 1 through 6 in our packet.
Good evening, Mayor and fellow council members. Some of you I know, some of you I haven't met yet. As he mentioned, my name is Joe McPherson. I'm the Assistant County Engineer for Anoka County. Excited to be here tonight. So not much of a presentation for you, but we're here tonight to discuss the joint powers agreement between the city and the county for the County Road 54 realignment project, which is already starting to get underway now. So I know that speaking with Elizabeth, there are a few questions that you have regarding the cost section, which is on page 3. Specifically, it looks like under number 3, costs, it's the third paragraph down. And so I thought I'd just give a little better explanation as to what that means. So on a typical project, we've got a cost share policy that we follow for every community, and it's consistent across the county. And so if you see the back page of this, there's an Exhibit C. That spells out the cost share policy that we use on every project in the county. Now, it has been updated since this time, but I left this one alone, or actually this one is the new one, so I take that back. We made some revisions this past fall regarding the replacement of signals that are warranted, and then also made some revisions for roundabout construction. But they're pretty minor changes. But nonetheless, this is the policy that we follow on every project. So for example, the top item, concrete curb and gutter, we split that cost share 50-50. And then the median construction, the curb and gutter associated with that, that's 100% county cost. So those are just a few of the items that we work through. Now going back to page 3, essentially what that paragraph 3 in there is saying under the cost section is if we follow that cost share policy to a T, that's what the city's cost would be. And so then we also add in the 8% for construction engineering. But the good news is, and I always like to be the good news guy, tonight I can tell you that due to the efforts of the city and the county back in 2016 and 17, we were successful in getting local road improvement program dollars to cover the entire cost for the city. So there is zero cost to the city. Yay. So that's a good thing. Now I'll say there's one hinge point to that. That is if the city adds any utilities or there's any city requested changes, that would be 100% city cost. So any questions on that or concerns?
Can you go over a little bit about the stormwater ponds? Because that was the other issue that we had some questions on.
Sure. So also consistent with our, the maintenance responsibilities, which are spelled out on, let's see which page that's on.
I think it's on 4.
Yes, yep. Page 4, it's item 10 there, maintenance. So stormwater is typically handled by the city. So We will handle catch basins and catch basin leads. So essentially, that's anything coming off the main trunk line for a storm sewer system. Those leads that lead up to the catch basin, we handle those, but the main trunk line is typically always the city's responsibility as well as the ponds. So that's kind of the process we've gone through for several years.
So I think it's probably my question that raises, because earlier in the document where it talks about, purchasing the right of way,
Yep,
the land that the stormwater ponds is on is owned wholly by the county. So doesn't make sense to me why the county owns the land, but then they're passing on the maintenance costs to the city. So can you help us understand that?
sure, that's a good
Rationale.
question. So since that facility is servicing the county road, we do purchase the property. We either purchase it in fee title, or in this case, I believe this case, it's actually an easement. It's a permanent easement.
It depends
So-
on which one. Yeah.
Yep, and so actually, it is owned by us, but it would still be the city's responsibility to maintain that pond. So we're owners of the pond, but the city would maintain the pond.
And that's the part I don't understand,
Okay.
why it works that way.
Sure. Well, the county has to own the pond since it's servicing our roadway. But it's just it's kind of been a long-standing agreement that the cities maintain the ponds, similar to development ponds that come in. So, I'm not sure how many ponds the city has with their developments. There's a lot of rural area out here, so a lot of it might just be drainage into a ditch system and then off to the county ditches. But in the urban areas, we have a lot of ponds. There's a lot of development-style ponds. So that's kind of where that comes from.
So Joe, what's involved with maintaining it usually?
So typically, your normal maintenance would be picking up trash, mowing around the ponds, if you so choose. Some of them, they just let grow wild and free. You got the native plantings in there. And then at periods, which I'll be honest with you, a lot of cities haven't even done it yet, is when you get into dredging the ponds. So if there's a lot of silt that builds up, if there's a lot of sediment that builds up, that's when there would actually be some dredging involved. But honestly, to my knowledge, I don't know of any cities in Anoka County that have gone to that degree yet. At least not on a county-owned facility servicing a county road that they're responsible
So
for.
what's the time frame? Perhaps 10 years?
I'd say dredging a pond might be 30 years out,
okay.
20 to 30 years out. It's not something you'd see in 10 years. Unless something was terribly wrong where you
Right.
got some house builders that are not following protocol.
So it's really not a big issue?
Not at this time, no.
All right, sorry, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Maybe we could provide a timetable for the improvements so we kind of understand when it's going to be started, finished, that sort of thing, if there's landscaping that's going into the following season.
Sure. So up on the board here, I've actually got a layout of the improvements that are going to take place. And maybe I'll just walk up there and point out a few things here.
You got a pointer right there if you want to use that.
Oh, there we go. I'll do that.
That's nobody
This
steals
one's-
it.
this one's
Oh, so no
easier,
one
Joe.
takes it.
Yeah.
This one's easier. Plus, it's green.
Thank you. All right, so many of you probably know the history of the project, but essentially, we're going to realign 54 West Freeway Drive, starting from the new roundabout on 23 to the south, and I'll tie back in before you get to the first business here. So from the roundabout, it's going to be a 2-lane road with shoulders, curb and gutter through this section. There is a left turn lane. We worked with the city on this, so that these properties here are developable, and you have that left turn in for a 3/4 access. We've made that, and then as you continue south, it transitions into a rural section with no curb and gutter, and transitions back to its original section. And then through here, we tie back into what will be the new city street. And then towards the north part here, that's where the cul-de-sac will go. Because eventually with the state's project that Schaefer's working on, that connection will be severed. So this will become a cul-de-sac.
Will they be able to enter Holiday then from the old West Freeway Drive?
They will, yes. There'll still be a connection off that cul-de-sac,
Okay,
just a little south of it, actually. So that connection will still be maintained. But, so the work right now, the contractor's getting ready to go. Some of their equipment may be out there already. They are going to start constructing this as soon as the weather's amenable, and then they're going to have this completed hopefully by the middle of June. So,
Middle of June?
yeah,
The trees are cleared.
yep. Yep, so they're trying to get in there and get this done as quick as they can. So weather permitting, we'll stay on that schedule. But we're trying to stay well ahead of Schaefer's project. Because ultimately, one of the things that's always been a concern is, when does the connection to the existing West Freeway Drive get severed? Does that happen early summer? And I asked that question at our last update meeting, their MOT meeting with the state, and at that time, they didn't know. It's a design-build project, so they design as they go, which is pretty unique. So a lot of times, they don't have all the answers because they're still working through them. So we're hoping to have our project done so that this connection can remain in place until we're ready to make this switch and they can connect to that roundabout.
Joe, there'll be a detour for a 2 or 3 week period of time?
That's correct. Yes, good point. So to facilitate the construction of this change, we're actually gonna have to close down West Freeway Drive for a period of time. I can't remember the exact specified amount of time. It's probably 3 to 4 weeks. It's minimal amount of work because you can build most of this offline. Most of this construction can take place. Then they'll shut down 54. They'll remove that old road bed, leaving some of it in place because there are city utilities in this area. And so they'll leave most of that in place for cover, and then they'll make the connections. Then at that point, the road should be ready to be opened.
But the detour is
Yes,
way
the
down
detour, yes.
south?
Yeah, it'll follow Zurich all the way down and connect back into West Freeway Drive to the south. Thanks, Dennis.
Wasn't it a lot farther south
I think it was, it's quite a bit further south. It's wherever,
at the end? It's not on Zurich.
I think we were gonna,
Or is it-
weren't we planning on using
Not
Zurich?
the last time I saw it, it was way down in Lino.
Way down in Lino, that's where they're taking it to? Okay,
I think that's
I'll have to follow up on that.
the last version I had seen.
Okay, I know it was going back and forth because it was such a short amount of time. We were looking
Okay.
at Zurich, but I'll follow up on that. Any questions on that? So hopefully by the middle of summer, we've got a fully functioning realigned roadway here. And we're out of the way, then we're just waiting for the state to finish up their work.
Anybody with any other questions?
So when it's complete, is it gonna go back behind Holiday and dead end there? Is that spur gonna be completely gone?
Yeah, so this roadway will still be maintained, and then it'll dead end before it hits 23 or 97 here, but this will remain. This will stay in place, there'll be a connection there.
It's the only way to go, it's the only way to go west,
Can you slide it
west
down?
on 23, coming out of Holiday.
Can you slide the drawing down just a little bit? There you go.
Yeah, so that connection will be severed. But you'll still have 3 access points to Holiday. From the west, there'll actually be a left turn in to this westerlymost access to Holiday. There'll still be the right out, which is there today. A lot of people do come in that way, but it'll be a right out in the future condition. Then there'll be a full access right here to the city street.
So if you want to go west, you have to come out of this driveway, come down around and go back up, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, everybody got it? So then, Elizabeth, we need a,
Joe would be looking for a motion to approve the joint powers agreement.
who wants to make it?
Make a motion to approve the joint powers agreement with Norfolk County and Columbus, the road
And,
project.
County Road 54. Do we have a second on it?
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed to it? If not, it passes.
Thank
Are
you.
you familiar with the other projects going on in Columbus?
Yes, I am. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So we've got several projects in Columbus this year. An overlay project that I know, Jeff, you've asked about before is on our County Road 62, north of Broadway, from that roundabout. We are gonna reclaim that entire roadway stretch up to the county line, and we're gonna add a 3-foot shoulder onto that section. So that'll be a big positive to that corridor.
Have you guys thought about a turn lane on 181st?
We're looking at that. We're looking at a southbound right turn lane there. It's a really constricted right-of-way.
Yeah, the
But-
driveway right there too. And
Yeah, so that'll be tough to do, but we're still looking into that. But that will happen this summer. The other 2 projects that are taking place is the signal at the intersection of Lexington and Broadway. There's one at the southern intersection of those 2 roadways, and then as you go around the switchback curves, there's another one at the north intersection as well. That'll take place this summer. And then the other project that's going on is on Broadway. Essentially, as you head west or east from that Lexington intersection, you've got nice wide shoulders there. They're 8 to 10 feet wide. We're going to perpetuate that along the whole corridor up to the roundabout. So essentially from County Road 19, we're going to continue that east. We're going to widen that shoulder and add some turn lanes and bypass lanes. So that'll be a big improvement there too. So those will all 3 of those will take place this summer.
any start dates on them?
The signal, we're just waiting for weather. And then the shoulder project, we're just working out the final permitting and approvals from MinDOT. So that'll likely take place shortly here. We hope to advertise that in April. And then the overlay program, the section of 62, that'll be part of our countywide overlay program. That's going to be let here probably in May, and it'll be a start in June. So, and that's a $9 million program this year, so there's a lot of roadways getting fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll do number 10. We'll have a planning commission report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. The Planning Commission met on 3/20/19, happily fully seated. Thank you. And we discussed a CUP for used car sales, vehicle repair, and body shop for California Cars Connection, 13733 Lake Drive, Northeast. And it'll be rust-free cars. They'll be selling online. It'll be appointment sales only. They are going to be flipping and reconditioning cars, 50s, 60s, 70s, nice muscle cars, things of that nature. Cars will be arriving on semis at appointed times because the gentleman will want to be there to inspect, so there won't be, they won't be coming and going at all hours. He assured us that he'll have scheduled times for that. And appointment sales only on that. He plans to have anywhere from 15 to 20 cars at the very most. They'll be stored inside a fenced area. The goal is to restore and move them. He does not want to hang on to inventory. He wants to keep flipping as quickly as possible. He did a 3-year lease with Waldock. He will have 3 employees, the owner and the owner himself and 2 others. A partner in California, and his California partner will also be the painter. He has started the process for a driver's license application, for a dealer's application. He is insured and bonded. He'll be running hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week since it is online sales. Leon was there and inspected, and he stated that he needed a fan. A fan will be needed for ventilation in there, and he said he would be working on it. Sales, like I said, about 20 to 30 per year is what his goal is, and he said he'd happily sell more if he could. Inside the building, it'll consist of a paint booth, and that'll be all self-contained and following all the guidelines. He'll have a lift and a frame rack. And he is working with the state of Minnesota about hazardous waste, and will be working with Anoka County as well. There was a concern about an open drain in the floor, and I spoke to Elizabeth, and she stated that it is closed and sealed, so that's not going to be any kind of issue. We did speak about additional landscaping, and he said he'll be on that this summer. He stated that he is willing to do whatever it takes to comply with the rules and the regulations of the city, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously to move it forward to yourselves for approval.
Thank you. Who has questions? It's a great fit down there, I believe.
Yes.
Denny?
I got no questions. I just can't believe that he can make it on selling 20 to 25 cars a year. I mean, if we were going to restrict him to that, he is not going to make it. Should up that. It's hard to.
Well, is that a restriction, or is that just,
That was just something he indicated. Yeah.
It's
he-
not listed.
No, I
couldn't
didn't, I
find
don't
many.
believe that was in there.
Yeah, it's just a finding, it's not a condition of
Okay.
approval.
The condition is up to 25 vehicles stored on the property at one time.
so you could sell 25, bring in 25 more, sell those, you'd have sold 50. Everything is good. I have one other thing I would like everybody to consider. On page 18, I would like to add perhaps a number 14, and we'd have to ask Doug when he thinks he would be settled in and compliant, to pick a date so that we can have our compliant officer go out and go through the list and make sure that everything is ready and up to everything that we've put on the findings and the conditional uses. So we'll maybe have them come up.
Okay. Any more questions for me?
Not on that, but was there anything else discussed majorly?
Let's see.
You want me to come up?
We
Sure.
basically.
You guys come on.
Just the newer planning commission members discussed taking some planning classes that you had already previously approved. And then Jody had indicated that she had spoke with you about the 2 years, 2 year on the, 2 years on all the new IUPs, and asked how the enforcement was going to be. And at this point, you had no direction for us on that. That was really it.
Yeah, thank you. Come on up.
I'm Doug Dykstra, and I'm thinking about a month to get everything cleaned and painted and cleaned up the whole yard and all that. In the meantime, anything that comes in there will mostly be put inside. As we don't want a bunch of stuff sitting outside.
So a month from now will be about May 1st,
Yes, sir.
and you think that gives you enough time to get
I
in,
think so.
get settled, get,
First thing I have to do is get an HVAC company in there to put the fan in for us, and then we can start painting right away.
I don't have that page in front of me, but your clarification, is that on the workings inside with the paint booth and the vents and the fans and everything? Does that include landscaping outside? That would be they would probably need more time on that.
yeah, because May 1st, if you plant something outside, it might freeze. So Elizabeth, what,
It was compliance with all the conditions of the conditional use permit. So it's basically an inspection saying that they met all of the conditions that are cited that we talked about at the planning commission meeting. And so,
so should we move it back to June 1st?
you
Or
know,
June 30?
or June 30, it's really, we're asking, I think the mayor's asking you what you think you can meet, and then we'll send out our CSO.
Okay, how about June 1st then?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, I have a proposed condition if you'd like.
sure.
On or around June 1st, the applicant will notify the city when all work is completed, so staff can inspect the use for compliance with the conditions of approval. Sound right?
Yeah. And that'll be number 14, correct?
That would be number 14, yes.
So that gives you a month to do all the indoor stuff, gives you another month to start planting the posies. Anything else you guys would like to add? You haven't met some of the board people, were not there, I think.
Not really. Jeff, kind of, the way in. We just want to be good neighbors and keep the place clean and do a good job there, that you're happy to let us in there. I don't plan on ever having somebody coming over and telling me this is not looking good or it won't happen.
All right. And you've read all your conditions and you indicated you had at the planning commission?
Yep.
So you get what we're asking?
Yes.
And what we expect? All right, so then would someone like to make a motion, please, about accepting or granting a CUP for the used car sales?
So moved, accepting,
You're approving this conditional use permit.
approve conditional use permit for the,
With the addition of number 14.
yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Very much.
Yep.
Thank you, good luck. I usually see a motion in here, in the packet, it says planning commission approves this motion.
Oh, yep. It didn't, but it was. All right, next is number 11. We have Joe and Deb Pribble, who would like to discuss a waiver on the seasonal road weight restrictions on Hornsby Street, pages A6 through 8.
Mr. Mayor, city council members, my name is Joe Pribble with Bear Home. Business address is 14744 Hornsby Street Northeast. And this is not Deb, but I'll let Chris introduce himself.
Chris Eichler with Bauer Design Build. We're the design builder of the property.
So what we're here to talk about was we were surprised to get a road restriction notice sent to the contractor after the 15th, when the spring road restrictions went into effect, because we had the understanding with the city from all of our meetings last year that we weren't going to be shut down. We were going to be able to work with the road out there that everybody knows is in poor condition. But the city had told us, or that's what we understood anyways, that they weren't going to shut down the business because of the road conditions, because we have to bring trucks in now during construction phase. And, as soon as we're in the building, we've got containers coming in all the time. And some of those are, could be overweight also. So we're here this evening to request, maybe explain a little bit more about our situation, answer your questions, and request a waiver to the road restrictions for our use of Hornsby Street. And the information that I provided to Elizabeth talks about the fact that the city already knows the road is in poor condition, and there's evidence in meeting minutes and recordings where it was discussed, and that was clearly stated. In fact, the words were horrible, road's in horrible condition. And so, and they weren't going to shut any business down because they already knew it had to be reworked, and what's to lose, what could go any worse? I mean, it's already in poor condition. So with all that, dialogue and discussions last year, we didn't think there was going to be any issue. We had enough issues over the winter with Mother Nature and all the weather, and so we were unpleasantly surprised to get the notice from the city. And it does shut us down because truck cranes, we have to get truck cranes in to put stuff on the roof, and truck cranes are over 5 tons just by themselves. They require like a 10-ton road just to go down with those truck cranes. And then beyond that, we've got a lot of concrete come in. It's 100,000 square foot, 7 inches deep. I've got the numbers on there. There'd be like 260 trucks of concrete coming in. If the road restrictions are required to be met, it basically doubles that. Essentially, it technically doubles that. And one thing I wanted to make sure the council members consider is that means a lot more trucks. In each of those trucks, still has all the base weight of the truck vehicle itself. So you're talking another 5 million pounds of traffic down the road just because of the additional trucks alone to carry that concrete spread out. It's a lot more cost for us. You know, we estimated, Chris estimated numbers, and it's could be much worse than that because the issues just snowball because as Elizabeth knows and other people that we dealt with last year as we're working on this, before we made the November 15th decision to move ahead, we were pushing for expediency on all fronts. And so further delays means that we won't have a building to bring inventory into. Our peak business season is in the summer and fall. The business started on Twin XL bedding, which is for colleges and dormitories. It's all sold online. And that season starts as soon as graduation gets over. And so we have inventory that's been ordered, it's coming, and we need a building to put it in. The building we're in right now is out of capacity. We already have like a dozen trucks off-site storing inventory because we're out of capacity. And all of this is just gonna, you know, mess us up seriously. And so on some of the documentation on the second page, or the last page, I should say, you know, I've got some of the numbers, I showed the schedule. Bauer's design build is saying that concrete would be coming in April, and that's a schedule with, you know, the original plan, you know, trucks loaded. If we have to spread that out, it probably means spreading out the deliveries and delays. We got roof rock that, I don't know if they've started delivering roof rock, but we got roof rock coming soon. The decking is on and they're ready to start putting on the insulation and the membrane and the roof rock for the ballast. So this is a big deal for us. I don't know if you got any comments or, if you have any questions, you know.
Yeah, any questions, I mean, please feel free to ask. Just a couple other items, just with how spring has come upon us so quickly on our job site. You know, there's some other items. Joe's focusing on some items that are inside the building. We're also restricted currently on what we can do on-site, outside the building, because we can't bring dirt work moving equipment on-site at this point because we're restricted by this 5-ton road that we hit down Hornsby. Right now, we're trying to construct a few temporary roads with 3-inch rock that we're also trying to, or having to downsize our truckloads to bring that down Hornsby at this point. So there's a few items or situations that we're already running into that's hindering construction. And as Joe's alluded to, it's only gonna start compounding here in the next 2 weeks as we move ourselves inside the building, especially with the concrete.
Other than cement trucks or dump trucks loaded on the roadway itself, you talked about needing, you know, cranes or other equipment to work on-site?
Yeah, yeah.
So what types of earth moving?
Sure. So right now, we don't have any equipment on site, from whether it be a dozer or a backhoe or any items to dig some of our exterior footings that we want to get going as well too. So I guess any of our dirt work equipment that we'd want to bring in, and then also, like Joe's mentioned, is just a fully loaded aggregate truck for our ballasted roofing system right now exceeds the 5-ton per axle load requirements that's on that road, which then we either need to downsize the truck, half load the truck, and then that doubles or more the quantity of trucks that we're bringing down that road so that we can just set our roofing system. At this point, we have a metal deck, and we're still trying to work through the logistics of getting the rock on site, or you end up laying insulation, ballasted roofing system, and then you don't want the opportunity to any of that fly away. So without the rock weighing it down, it hinders our progress to dry in our building as well.
A little bit of other background, I guess, for the council is we had a discussion last summer or fall about weight restrictions on not just this road, but other roads, and provided some information. The traffic industry uses a measurement called an easel, equivalent single axle load. So what they do is they compare, what's a fully loaded semi, not talking about cement trucks right now, but, and they say that's typically 18,000 pounds on an axle or a 9-ton type of vehicle. And if a semi weighs 20 times more than a car, the impact isn't 20 times more, it's like 3,000 times more because it's an exponential curve on the impact to the pavement and the subbase. So in this case, just for the math, a 10-ton axle vehicle doesn't have twice the impact of a 5-ton. It has around 12 times the impact. And so if you're, with the cement trucks, if you're gonna have 260 loaded cement trucks, at each one at 12 times the impact, by the time you're done, it's about 3,000 times the impact to the roadway, which is why it was posted at 5-ton. And, it is, there's some places, if you've driven out there, where it's breaking up right now, mainly close to the construction entrance. And I know by, having it go another year, it would be, I'm sure there's going to be damage when snow plowing comes again, or just maintaining the roadway as it is. So I think some of the history was at one time it was thought, if this was originally a 2021 project on the city's plan, talked about could it be done in 2019. Last year we were discussing that, and with the way it played out and the funding needing to be discussed yet, we're looking at a 2020 project probably at the earliest if the council chooses to go forward with it. So we've got another year to maintain the road. But I just wanted to have a little background with the impacts that loaded vehicles have, whether or not an exception could be made to allow equipment to get in there, whether it's a crane or an earth-moving truck, as long as it's just working on the site and not running back up and down. Hornsby Street might be, one option, but to have 260 cement trucks and 45 dump trucks, so you have over 300 vehicles fully loaded, would likely cause a fair amount of damage.
What does speed play in that variable?
Not, to my knowledge, speed is not much of a contributing factor. It's the actual load of the,
When you talk about bringing your cranes in, is it one crane comes in and sits, does whatever it has to do, or is it coming in once a week, or is there 10 of them coming in? Is that the biggest weight, the biggest issue, is getting the crane in or not?
From a single load, I can't answer that confidently. I'd have to go back and look through what we have for upcoming deliveries at this point. From an equipment perspective, I would say yes. The crane needed to hoist material up to the roof is the largest piece of equipment that we have coming in. But then again, also just there's 3 to 4 large pieces of equipment that are still needed for the site as well, so that we could start working on.
And what are they?
So those would be mostly dozer, a couple dozers, and then 2 backhoes. You'd have a couple mini excavators and bobcats, but those are well within the load restrictions, so we can get those pieces of equipment on site right now.
One item that I would just, for a fact, I just want to make sure the council's aware of, and yes, there are certain portions of Hornsby Street that is in disrepair, which I think we're all aware of, that's right here at 48. But the first quarter mile, third mile, is not. That's a brand-new road, and that was just constructed recently. And so, yes, we have portions of the road in that will be replaced, but there are portions of the road that are brand-new.
And what's the road restrictions on those?
is that portion posted?
That one is posted.
Everything at 5 tons per
Yeah.
axle, knowing that at some point, so that first section that is done, I believe it is more than 5 tons per axle. I don't know what it is.
It's 9 or 10, somewhere in there.
So it's 9 or 10, but that's only for a quarter mile. And then it goes downhill
But we've posted the whole road at 5 ton for seasonal weight restrictions.
Yeah, and my concern is what happens, you know, if you say, oh, well, just during this construction phase, well, next spring, we have containers coming every day. You know, this is a big business that we're bringing into Columbus, and you're going to shut us down next spring again?
This doesn't apply to deliveries, correct? So that wouldn't shut you down? It's
Why
not.
not?
Becau-
Is the roads restricted, period,
No,
doesn't say?
generally, it does not apply to local deliveries because
Right.
businesses have to operate.
Well, we need to get this building constructed, too. This is a local delivery, concrete.
Yeah,
I
so
don't
just,
think that's what I don't believe that's what they're implying. Would
No,
you
local
please
delivery is
restate?
different than construction equipment.
But I mean, to answer your question about next year, that wouldn't be an issue because those are considered local
Well, we
deliveries.
might not have a business next year if we don't get this building done and keep the growth going, because it all is based, all the issues snowball in this business because it's e-commerce business, and we've got to maintain the sales to keep the growth going. If you start losing your sales, your rankings on these e-commerce sites, Amazon, Walmart, all these things, your rankings drop down, and it's like starting all over again. We've got the momentum going, we've got good rankings, good listings, and we got to keep that momentum going with the inventory that we have coming in from overseas.
So it's really not a point of shutting you down, it's a point of doubling the amount of trips to get the material in there.
Well, yeah,
And adding cost.
factor, yes.
Mr. Mayor and Council, one alternative that we've used in other settings, construction sites, for subdivisions now, but heavy equipment, is to have the developer post a letter of credit or bond. And so in lieu of being, I don't know where the council's going, but I'm just trying to give you some alternatives. In lieu of, kind of a complete prohibition, you could have a certain allowance with some understanding that there'd have to be posted security. And that security could be used to repair damage that occurs after, the date of the approval.
Yeah, I don't see that being acceptable for us because the road already is crap. You guys turn around and tell us, well, now the road's shot, you got to pay for, $2 million for a new road. I'm not going to agree to that. That's not fair.
The first third,
I'm addressing the council, sir.
the first third of the,
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
yeah, just so you know, that I don't think that's fair legally, because we had a city council tell us they weren't going to shut us down. They were going to work with us. They wanted us to come in. We made the decision to come to Columbus because of the cooperation we were getting from the city. And now it's an about face, it seems like. And I'm pleading with you, don't do this to us.
In the city attorney's example there is another alternate. We're not looking at a $2 million cost. That's to improve the road, widen the road and improve it to 10 ton. I think in that scenario, you'd be looking at a letter of credit to repair the pavement, which could, maybe be a $100,000, $200,000 number. And that's just a letter of credit to cover.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not going to replace the entire roadway.
we don't have $200,000.
Yeah, and again, you're not going to end up.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I just want to let you know that our office did look into the authority of the Public Works Department, and it is a statutory provision that seasonal road restrictions are at the discretion of the city. We have an ordinance on tonight's agenda which further clarifies those restrictions, but even absent an ordinance, the city, through its Public Works Director, does have authority. I just want to be clear that that's not in question tonight. The question is how you want to handle this particular request.
All right.
So I have a question. And when I look at the information that you provided to us, so you don't list the cranes or anything. You say roof rock trucks, cement trucks, and excavation trucks. So just so I understand, the roof rock trucks are the trucks bringing in the rock that goes on top of your roofs, right?
Correct. Yep.
So why could that have been done in the fall? I mean, a lot of times when developments go in and they know that there's spring road restrictions, they'll bring as much of that stuff in ahead of them as possible. Was there a problem with doing that?
Sure, so we started mass excavation on the project, call it Thanksgiving, 1st of December. And the focus, based on where the weather was at that point, was to just get the footings and foundation in the ground. So with focusing on just the building pad itself, that rectangle, could that have been done? Yes, but also, if you would take a drive out to that site right now, if we would have done that, our rock would be sinking into the dirt that we have out there. We have a very, it's a combination of a nice black dirt topsoil that leads into a silty clay profile. So what that's doing right now, just with our quick thaw, is if you take a step in it, you're sinking about 18 inches in your boot. So if we would have stored that rock, which it wasn't considered at the time, but if we would have, we would be losing a fair amount of it right now, based on conditions.
Yeah, and the reason it wasn't considered is we thought we had support to just go ahead and use the road. There was it was never even
Right.
discussed, because it was never a question in our mind. We
So
had
I'm
support from the city.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, I mean, some of us weren't on the council then, so you have the recordings of that? Would it be helpful to listen to that? Because, I mean, to me, my concern, to be honest, sir, is that if you're saying that a promise was made, I want to make sure that it really was a promise, because that means something, and it means something to also say that you're saying we're breaking our promise. So I really would like to hear that recording.
Yeah, and I don't know if Elizabeth wants to pull those up, but we had many meetings last year with the city.
I remember,
Some of them
I
were
was there.
recorded and some of them weren't. And I just found that out last week. I thought everything was recorded, but not everything was recorded. And so some of these discussions we can't find, honestly. There was a meeting on the 25th of September where it was a special meeting. Neither of us were here, but our son, who owns the business, was here, and Chris's boss, Mike Bauer. And in that meeting, it was discussed, even though in the recordings we can't find it, we know it was discussed because the very next meeting the next day, was recorded, and the city council brought up, and they said, oh, by the way, we need to talk about what we discussed last night in the meeting, and you can listen to that where they talked about it, and they were bringing Dennis up to speed on their discussion about it. And then there was another meeting on October 10th, which I was in. Mayor was in the back of the room in that meeting, and in that meeting, there was a dialogue between Public Works and the city council, and it went something along the lines of, we're not going to stop a business going in. They were talking about Hornsby. Drive on the road. What's the worst that can happen to it? We need to redo it. We already know it. We need to redo it. Hornsby is horrible. Yes, we know it's horrible, and we have put it off for how long? So, I mean, I took all of those as, it's not going to be an issue. We're going to be able to bring stuff in. And to me, that's the promise we walked away with and agreed on the 15th of November to proceed with this project. And Denny was in these meetings, and Jeff, I don't know if you guys want to, I know I don't remember everything either, so, we had to go back and look at the tapes, but we can't find everything. And I know there was other discussions too, but it's up to you.
Yeah, let's listen to it.
Turn up the volume, so all of you have to push your,
And the one on the table. Hold it down.
Our discussion last night had to do with a 10-ton road over on South Hornsby there for approximately half a mile. I mean, they're looking at doing the whole thing, but to get to a new potential development, that's a city road, 7-ton road from what we heard. It would need to be at least a 10-ton road.
Yeah, I think the previously realigned Hornsby is a 9-ton. 9 or 10.
It was only 9.
There's a hairline difference between the two, so I'd
Okay.
have to look at it again.
It will handle a fully loaded 80,000 pound semi,
Right.
all year round?
It's, well, if, unless there's weight restrictions
Well, the weight restriction, that'd be on a city
on
road,
the
so,
smaller.
what's that?
So it should, yeah. 9 ton, 10 ton is similar in that regard.
Okay,
But that should be able to handle it all year round.
Right.
okay, even with weight restrictions, I mean, they can't not bring in product.
Right.
Okay, so I guess our sentiments were that if we maybe postpone this and maybe need to spend the money over there, how many dollars are we talking per mile to build a 9-ton, 10-ton road?
I don't know if I have those numbers off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor. I'm assuming it would look something similar to the section that's out there now, maybe they're not as wide as shoulders, because right now on Hornsby
Right.
South, you have two 12-foot lanes and 8-foot shoulders. I'm guessing you don't want to run that all the way down. Maybe have narrower shoulders. Otherwise, you'd be looking at quite a bit of widening.
I think we're gonna need that number. Do you guys agree?
I agree. Yeah, we need that number.
Typically on
To
something,
make a decision on this.
typically on a street reconstruction or widening project like that, we do a small feasibility study, and then you'd also look at funding. How much city funding is there versus, will any of it, portion of it be assessed?
Right, and we talked about doing the whole thing all the way down, but, I guess. Oh, is that true? Okay, so I guess we're looking at that whole thing then.
That being said,
To do some soil borings or what?
I think at that point, Jim is talking from the audience, so it's hard to hear him. But I think that's the end of the conversation. That's
Do we wanna put this on hold and direct Dennis to do some of those, or?
You can take our fingers off.
Yes, you can take your fingers off. In that conversation, the context of that conversation was when we first started talking about whether or not we were going to reconstruct Hornsby Street and how we were going to do that. And I think after that conversation, the city staff was directed to conduct a feasibility study, and that's when Dennis, our city engineer, started working on the feasibility study, which we have discussed at a workshop. There's several different options that you have, choices as to how you want to improve Hornsby Street. I don't think any of the decisions were made then, whether it was going to be a 19 project, a 20 project, or a 21 project, because at the time, the council didn't know how much it was going to be. And I think that would have, if it didn't cost as much, it might have been a 19 project, but because of the cost, and we don't, you know what I mean, and you know the price tags that were on each one, it would have been very hard to do a 2019 project.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just two questions on my mind that haven't been asked, and maybe council members also have similar questions. One is, typically, when do restrictions come off? So how long of a delay are we talking about? And the second question would be, what is our professional staff's expectation about the damage that's going to be done?
I think in the information that that was provided, it shows the historical load restrictions when they start and when they end, so it varies, but you could say on average, it's end of April, late April when they come off. 1 or 2 years, it might have dragged over into the first week of May, but usually it's late April.
Yeah, the chart that I put together, I took the data from history, and if you look at the last 10 years, I think by law, it's maximum's 8 weeks. Somebody told me that recently. It is 8 weeks. It is 8 weeks? Yes. Okay, so it can't go beyond 8 weeks, but the last 10 years, it averaged about 6.5 weeks. So the orange bar, and that's, well, I don't know if yours is colored, but the orange bar at the end of the week of the 22nd of April, that would be if you went the average of 6.5 weeks. Otherwise, if it goes out, worst case would probably be that first week in May. This, based on my numbers.
To your second question, it's very difficult to estimate the damage. All we can go by is kind of what we're seeing so far. I know Public Works probably has some other history on the road. A part of it south of there was repaired at one time, or previous years.
Want to come over here, Jim?
No, I'm good here. I can talk loud enough. That road, we all agree the road's not good. And we know that it needs to be repaired. And my concern is my department's the one that has to maintain it. And we can already see, since road restrictions went on, that the road is breaking up in front of your facility. If we haul on that, it's going to extrapolate to what nobody knows. But you talk about your site and how murky that is what our road is built on as well. So, I mean, you think about, you can't walk out there. The only thing holding our road together is the asphalt on the top. Everything underneath is, not much of solid soil. So my concern is if we were to allow somebody to drive on it, what is it gonna look like until we repair it? And is anybody even gonna be able to drive down it? So if you go past that site down onto the gravel section, that road is virtually impassable many years because the road is so poor. And that's what that whole section is built like. So my fear is if we were to allow it, it'll virtually be gravel for the next however long till we decide to repair it. And that's not gonna do you very well either at that point. So, I mean, I personally would have said, if we were repairing that road in 2019, I would concede that I would probably be for letting you guys haul on it, because I know that we're gonna fix it. But if we're not gonna fix it in 2019, I don't know what the road will look like. I don't even know that I'd be able to plow it. And that's what I have to look at. So if it's not a 2019 project, which we all agree it's not at this point, my recommendation is to not allow anything more than 5 tons.
And the problem is that if it breaks up like that, not only can residents not drive on it, you won't be able to either. I mean, you'll be in worse shape than you are
I can't really
now.
repair it at that point. There's
Right.
nothing left to repair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just starting last week, I was gone on Friday, but I got a call from my guy. And he said the road is starting to break up out there. So I happened to be in town at that point, and I drove by it and it was all alligator cracked. From the pictures that I got last week, plus what I witnessed, it's 5 times worse than that today. So knowing that by the end of road restrictions, I can't even really tell you what it's gonna look like. There might not be any asphalt left right there. I mean, right now, there's gravel on top of the asphalt.
I mean, this is, to me, something that the city should have understood before they started promoting it, industry to come in there. I mean, this is news to me. I never knew that the road was built on mush. I mean, so now we're responsible for dealing with this mess? I mean, the city, I think, has to take some responsibility for, promoting and enticing a business to come in and not having roads adequate to support the business. I don't know, I hear you, I understand, and if I was in your shoes, I would be like, what am I supposed to do,
I'm hired to maintain.
Yeah, I understand.
And so my recommendation is strictly the responsibility in the maintenance of that roadway. And knowing that you're one person on that road and there's multiple people that drive that road every day, it has to be, it's a public safety issue for me, and that's what I look at. So if I was to say, yes, haul on it, I don't, by the end of road restrictions, I don't know that there would be much asphalt left there. But maybe there would be. I mean, I don't have that answer, but seeing what I see there right now, I'm saying that it's gonna not be very good.
I have a question for Dennis or JW. Isn't it unusual to lift road restrictions? I'm 60 years old. I've never heard of it before this application came in.
Yeah,
I
it's.
mean, road restrictions are
I'm-
road restrictions. If
I'm
you've got a
not-
driver's license, you know it's road restrictions.
I haven't experienced either, to my knowledge.
It sounds like Bill has experienced it. He's saying that you could do,
Mr. Mayor and Council, let me address that. When I just had an additional thought, when the Public Works Director was testifying, my assumption is that we could repair damage, but if you're saying that the roadbed, it's going to be shot after road restrictions, then getting a letter of credit is not sufficient. What I was describing, Mr. Mayor and Council, is on Furman where the road had been upgraded. This was during the construction season outside of road restrictions. The road had been upgraded, and the city didn't want to see its upgraded road destroyed during the hauling of mining mineral materials off the site. And so in that case, the developer kind of got started without permission. And so the resolution was to have the developer post a letter of credit that we could draw on if the developer destroyed the road. But that was during the regular hauling season, not during road restrictions. So thanks for that question, because I want to clarify the instance. And the question I would have, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, is of our Public Works Director. So even if we got $200,000 letter of credit, not saying that you're going to post that, but it wouldn't do any good if the base is gone.
You could place asphalt over what was there right now, but you still ultimately haven't replaced any base. So you haven't made it any better, you've just made it passable at that point.
It'd be a Band-Aid until it was reconstructed.
Okay.
But that's,
And potentially you would end up with the same thing again. So, I mean, because the asphalt is just floating on the mud. So when you drive on it, it flexes, and that's why it cracks.
But we do have to, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we do have to, as a city, make the road passable for business on that stretch. So in any case, it's our city obligation, I think that's a correct statement, to make the road passable for the existing businesses. But I have not seen, to the engineer's point, I have not seen road restrictions, and to the mayor's point, I've not seen road restrictions lifted in this way. Because the idea with road restrictions is the road can't support that weight.
the extra
during-
heavy weight.
Yep, during that time.
So you could, so if they drove on it and did whatever damage they're going to do, and we know there will be, but if you went along after they're all done or after the spring thaw is here, and they put up their money and they repaved whatever thickness it is, 2 inches or 4 inches, and then that gets the city by and them by to finish their building in the summertime, to start their business running, allowing other people to continue driving on that road. And either in 1920 or 21, or 2020 and 2021, when we finally decide to go ahead with the rebuilding the whole road, that gets scraped away or recycled or whatever happens to it. So it is a Band-Aid, but it would allow them to decide what's more important, to wait till the road restrictions to go off, or put up their letter of credit, or whatever they have to do. And it also would make the road passable on that portion, whatever damage is done to it.
It would make it passable, but then we would be probably placing weight restrictions next spring again, to his point about.
But they'd be done building by then,
Yeah,
theoretically.
so if you
hopefully.
could allow delivery vehicles only.
And plus, if it was up to their driveways or past their driveways or wherever the damage is the new blacktop stronger or better, or, I mean, to get them through next spring? But, and also, you only have how many, you promised 4 trucks a day? At one of these meetings, 4 semi-loads of stuff comes in the morning, and the UPS trucks take them away. So there's a lot of difference from 4 semis instead of 260 cement trucks loaded. Meaning, and so there wouldn't be that much damage from the 4 trucks, I think. Or, I'm asking, you're the engineer.
Yeah, it depends on their loading, assuming it's not heavy material. But, so your point was putting up that letter of credit and repaving it after the spring restrictions are off?
Well, is that a sensible option? I mean, it's our responsibility. We can't just say, go ahead and do it
Right.
in the road.
Right.
All the old ladies.
No, it's
in
an
Columbus are
option
gonna pay
to,
for it.
I think, to Band-Aid to get it, particularly if the reconstruction project would happen in 2020. It'd be a better scenario.
JW, can I ask a question, or Dennis? For the new part of Hornsby, which has been built at a higher level or a higher tolerance, even though we have the road restrictions on that now, did I understand from the conversation that you were having with the former mayor that likely there wouldn't be any sustainable damage by running things? I don't know how much these trucks weigh and whether 9 ton per axle is, less than what they are. I mean, because to your point, you don't want to wreck that new part. And I just am not understanding whether or not this amount of traffic on that new part would cause sustainable damage since it's been built at a higher standard.
Yeah, well, you see like the state roadways and things are, still allow traffic, so that newer section of Hornsby Street that was built 7, 8 years ago is a very thick section. I mean, because it went through the swamp, they mucked it out and put sand back and gravel, and so I'd say it's at least a 10-ton roadway. I haven't looked at the section or done the math, but
They surged it for an entire season, 12 months. They weighed down the, because that's such a,
But they dug out muck down to 14 feet deep and replaced it all with good material, so, to your point, it's likely that would not see much damage.
So that maybe,
JW, I have another question. Am I thinking correctly or not about this? If they're desperate enough and they want to, feel they must do it before the frost goes out, but they would just be driving, there's nothing you can do if they start bringing in their stuff tomorrow. By dark, that road will be destroyed.
Potentially.
But there's no laying blacktop over the top of that now to do anything until after. So then the neighbors, it starts raining, they'll be going up and down that road, it'll be impassable. So then we're gonna be getting the heat from everybody who lives up and down, travels that road. Can they go throw on 3 inches of blacktop tomorrow, roll it out, wait till the weekend, and then or do you wait until after the damage is done and then do it?
I don't really have a good answer for that.
Putting black,
I mean, because you're gonna put the asphalt on there, and it's still gonna flex at this point.
Right.
So, I mean, will that crack as well? Probably, because you haven't fixed the root problem, which is under the asphalt. Would it make it better? Absolutely.
And and again, I'm here to answer regarding our site, and I'm a vertical construction, so these individuals know more about road construction than me, but I would not advise laying down asphalt with current temperature look-aheads the way they are. I wouldn't put asphalt down on my site, so I assume we wouldn't want to put it down on the roads. So as I'm understanding your question, Mr. Mayor, regarding can we put it down tomorrow and then start sort of beating that up the next 4 weeks to get us through road restrictions? You're just gonna ruin that asphalt quicker.
Because what will happen, so you start running and it rains one afternoon or a week, you'll have the biggest mess over there that you haven't seen in Columbus for a while. And so then what? Bring in 20 semi-loads of of gravel to fill it with?
At this point, I can't answer it. I mean, I
I
know
mean, you won't be
that-
able- you won't be
I mean,
able to
when-
leave it.
When something happens on a road, we go out there, we look at it and say, what is the best fix? Do we haul 1.5 inch rock in there to push it into a mud hole to try to firm it up? We've done that. You know, do we try to patch over the top of it? We've done that. We don't have a way to patch a whole roadway, you know what I mean? But we can do small sections and do different things. So, I mean, really, you go out there, you look at it, you try to figure out the best fix, and that's what you do. Sometimes it's hiring somebody else to do it, sometimes you take care of it yourself. The whole, I mean, hypothetical, we could say, haul away. And it might be the 2 spots that are broken up, that might be the only damage on the road. It's a total unknown at this point. But knowing that it's starting to break up that fast in multiple areas, my guess would be that ultimately the whole thing is gonna start to break up that way. And will it be the whole 3/4 of a mile? No, I'm guessing not, but there will be sections in there that will break up.
And it's unlikely that it would do that after road restrictions are lifted, or are we still looking at that as a real possibility?
If the road restrictions were lifted, they can haul away.
I know, but
I
what do
mean,
you expect?
Would it damage the road?
Yeah,
Probably in some fashion. Not to the extent that it would now, though.
okay,
Because the bases, I mean, once the frost is out of the ground, it somewhat dries up underneath the road, so it firms
More
up and
stable.
it's not spongy anymore, it's more solid.
okay.
So, I mean, they hauled on it all last fall with no major damage, you know what I mean? So just the last week of, and I don't know that you've ran really anything in and out of there this week other than just regular vehicle traffic, and that's starting to break up right there.
But does the hauling all fall causes a stress on it? And as long as everything was laying flat, it was all right. Now it's starting to move around, so then the damage that was done is showing up now, to a degree.
Potentially. I mean, when you talk about a fully loaded semi-truck is equal to 3,000 cars, so I don't know how much a fully loaded dump truck weighs, but probably somewhere, 70,000 pounds, so that's equal to 2,500 cars. So there's not 2,500 cars a day that run that stretch, so if they run one truck down there, that's more traffic count than what we run on that in a normal day.
Okay. All right. So, anybody have anything more to add? We should discuss. So what is, well, let's go back. Even though you had written this up as the city breaks their promise and blah, 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 we are not breaking our promise. We are not against you. We're not selling you with a bad road. So,
I would tend to disagree,
okay, but,
because there's another audio. Listen to the one on October 10th.
Jesse, can you bring that, when I closed it, it closed everything. So now I don't know how to retrieve that one.
we understand your anxiousness to get your building complete.
Microphones, everybody.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
$150,000 that we've allocated for a 2021 project, we can move that up, plus the TIF money, and then figure out what the balance of the cost is and figure out how to pay for that, because that, if we reconstruct, that's not part of what we've budgeted for. And we could even go the process that, I mean, we don't know what that road is built out of, but at this point, we're not gonna stop a business from going in, drive on the road. I mean, what's the worst that's gonna happen to it? We need to redo it, and we already know that we need to redo it.
You're, Hornsby,
Hornsby Street.
right, that's horrible, I mean, it's,
It is horrible, and we know it's horrible, and we've put it off for how long?
well, you know, but one of the things we did first few years I was here as mayor was repave a big chunk of the southern piece of that.
That's the message that we heard. And,
And so, not to cut you off, but so my statement is based off of, if we're gonna pave it in 2019, I'll tell you to drive on it. Because we're gonna fix it. So it's, I mean, it's gonna be bad for a very short amount of time.
Right.
Versus a whole year.
right, and I understand it's been delayed, but that's not our issue. We understood the road was gonna be drivable or usable for whatever we needed it to support our business.
But nobody in Minnesota drives on road-restricted roads.
But you just heard, they said, the road's horrible, what's the worst can happen? It's already horrible.
But that was when we were discussing in the context of having it done within 2019.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I was at all those meetings, and the context at all those meetings was about whether to rebuild Hornsby now or later, not whether there would be road restrictions in the spring. Road restrictions in the spring are a fairly common thing. And sir, let me just finish, okay? I'm advising the council of my recollection of the discussions, and they've been very generous in hearing you out. So the whole discussion that took place in the summer and the fall was about whether to reconstruct the road, whether there was sufficient funding. And ultimately, the council was not able to put together the funding, and they said, well, the road's going to, break up. It's going to be broken up over normal traffic. There was never a discussion about weight limits, road restrictions, spring thaw. None of that was discussed in that context. Maybe it should have been, but it wasn't. And so, as your council, I don't feel like there was a commitment. And if we do have an agreement with a developer, it's in writing. There are bonds posted, there are construction schedules, and I'm sorry that this gentleman feels that something happened or he had a commitment. He had a commitment that he could drive on a road that's in bad repair, but no commitment to lift road restrictions. And I'm very clear about that. So again, you can decide what you want to do, but I just want to set the record straight, at least from where I sit.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I thought the meetings were gonna be videotaped also, and they weren't. And so, I know there was a meeting where I asked specifically, and I think that's what prompted the discussions about, because on the other video or recording, they talked about the fact that the road had to be passable during road restrictions. They specifically talked about that in the previous recording. And then this one talked about, we're not going to stop a company from going in. And I interpreted that as they knew we had construction. We knew we had winter construction, and that we weren't going to be moving in until May. We talked about that from the get-go. Nobody said, that you aren't going to be able to use it because it's only a 5-ton road. It was always, yeah, the road's poor, we got to upgrade it, and it was going to be usable. So I know nothing is in writing. In hindsight, I would have made damn sure it was in writing. But yeah, shame on me.
Just for clarification, we do tape every council meeting, city council meeting. There was one exception last year, which was during Christmas and New Year's, where we moved a council night from Wednesday to Thursday. And it was taped, but not videoed. But otherwise, every council meeting there's a video. The two meetings that Mr. Pribble is referring to is, there was a hearing completed during a planning commission meeting, and planning commission meetings at that time were not videoed. None of them were. No planning commission meeting was until December, when the previous mayor indicated that he wanted planning commission meetings taped, and then from that meeting on, we did videotape them. But there were recordings of them, but no video of them. The other one was where we, again, had a special meeting because our consultant was not available, so it was an alternate night than what we are scheduled, and so that was not taped. But all other meetings, unless there's a problem with the equipment, we do video all of the council meetings
And audio tapes.
and have audio tapes. I will say that we've listened, Jesse and I have listened to a number of tapes because we knew this issue was going to be on the council agenda. And when the previous mayor asked your consultant when he was presenting in September, he asked him what the construction season was. And at the time, and the answer was, there wasn't a calendar yet. And so really, we didn't talk about the calendar because it wasn't presented at that meeting.
So, do you want to explore, as the counselor has suggested, of some kind of bond thing to do? I mean, what's in your best interest? Wait until the restrictions are off, find out the cost to do some kind of bond thing? Or how do we move this along?
What position is the council taking?
Do we take a vote on it, or how do we?
You should, Mr. Mayor, you should thank the gentleman for his testimony, so we're not getting into a debate back and forth while the council has discussion. This is not a public hearing, so I think it's appropriate for the council to have discussion without being interrupted, and then you should make a decision.
Before they do that, after they make a decision, can I,
That's at the mayor's discretion, but what I'm trying to avoid is this kind of back and forth, so the council's not interrupted in their discussion,
well,
because it's not a public hearing.
yeah. I guess maybe one, you mentioned that the Public Works has discretion to make a decision on the
It's been
situation.
delegated by the council to the Public Works Director.
And so if 2 weeks from now, Public Works thinks that the roads are better or stronger, I mean, would he have the discretion to say, yeah, you can go ahead and, or, you know, maybe we start bringing in trucks and it looks, cement trucks or any trucks that are partially loaded and it looks like things are going well and it's not an issue? Could we then perhaps reconsider and allow full loads to be brought in? Or, you know, some kind of a compromise
I'm
possible?
not an engineer. Dennis, give me some pointers.
Well, how do we, yeah, how do
So
you
if the sun
know,
shines from now till 2 weeks,
how do you know when
For
to
3
lift
weeks
road?
even.
You're
road
not going to
restrictions?
necessarily immediately see the impacts. Maybe you will, like you're starting to see now, but
but he's talking 3 weeks, we're already 10 days into the restrictions, right?
yeah.
So that's a month.
My recommendation, if you want to go that route, would to bring in a geotechnical testing company to see what impacts vehicles will be having on the roadway.
Well, okay, I'm just saying, what's the chances in 4 weeks, in a month?
Well, more than
be
likely,
better,
road
could be
restrictions
worse.
will be off in 4 weeks, give or take, if it's already been almost 2 weeks. So if historically it's 6.5, 7 weeks, more than likely the road restrictions will be off a month from now.
What signals to you when to lift road restrictions? What signals to you to lift road restrictions? So that's who makes the call. Okay, thank you.
Yep, it's the commissioner.
So you're talking 3 weeks, and you're saying there's a good possibility in 4 weeks.
Historically.
So unless it turns 10 below for a week, or rain every stinking day. I don't know, rain would actually help bring it out, right? Possibly. So that's not that far off of your 3 weeks, correct?
I'm just looking at when the majority of the trucks is obviously where the costs and where the delays are going to be. And they're scheduled to start around the 15th of April.
And those are the what, cement trucks?
Yes.
But the cement trucks can come in half-loaded, right?
Yes.
And if the road restrictions come off a week later, they can, how long of a time will it take to haul it? A week or more?
To complete the concrete work,
Yep.
with a half-loaded truck, we're looking at about 2.5 weeks based on turn time and how quickly we can move them in and out. If we have fully loaded trucks, we're looking at about 4 to 5 days worth of work.
So in theory, you could start as per your schedule, and you can start hauling with half loads. And if the road restrictions come off, which is very likely before you've got more than a week into it, then you're free to roll.
Not based on my projections of when it would come off. Well, yeah, you're right. We'd be 2 weeks into it before they'd probably come off, based on average time.
Mr. Mayor, and council, if I can give you some guidance, I don't think you need to solve their construction project. I think you just need to be clear about when and if road restrictions are going to be lifted. And then, I think most developer builders just want certainty as to the rules they got to play by. So I think rather than try and figure out if they're going to take half loads or full loads, I think if you can be clear about, whether or not you want restrictions and whether or not you would modify those restrictions based upon some sort of letter of credit, then they can take that back, they can look at their schedule and see if that's worth putting up some, some surety that the roads won't be further destroyed during this period. I think it's difficult for you to figure out whether half loads or, full loads make sense. I think that's kind of the folks here's job, and they'll figure that out once you provide direction.
Right. I was just trying to be helpful.
I know, but I know how this goes when you try and compromise on the
Because
on
I
the
don't
fly.
like them accusing us of being anti-business and anti-his business. We're all more pro-business, so is Columbus, but we can't destroy the road and expect everything to go on.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I can, this is probably my opinion and maybe shouldn't be interjected, but I know that the city, all of the city, the staff, the council at the time, the planning commission, moved heaven and earth on a number of fronts to work with the state for funding to provide the very first tax increment district. So I think it'd be difficult to say that in this case, we were not pro-business.
All right, thank you. All right, you guys go back and we'll discuss it. This is not a hearing, this is just discussion, right?
Correct.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. All right, council? Who has something to add? Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we heard it all. It's hard not to see them go forward with things, but it's hard to see the road get right. We got a new section there. We hate to see anything happen to that. The old section, well, it's not quite as critical, but if they're not going to do anything until April 15th, I don't know.
Well, they can haul half loads
Loads, yeah.
until April 15th, or when the frost goes, or when the restrictions come off. Yeah, so they'll start April 15th.
Yeah.
A week from that will be the 21st. Another week will be the 1st of May.
Right, but we don't know when restriction will be coming off, whether it'll be in the middle of that or the end of that
Great.
time period,
But the worst scenario would be about May,
likely.
1st of May. All right, Janet, what do you think?
I don't feel like we have any options. I mean, I think we have to leave the restrictions the way they are. And, maybe entertain the option of having there be some sort of surety for damage, but other than that, I don't know that we have any other options.
Jenny, what do you think?
Well, I agree with her. We should leave restrictions on as far as the bonding goes. The bonding would make, if they agree to bond, put money or letter of credit down, they can go with their full loads. I mean, it's going to destroy the road. I think we should wait with the restrictions we got on it.
Shelley?
I don't believe that the road restrictions are capricious. I have to trust what we've done, or what the state of Minnesota has required in the past, and I feel like we have to go with that. They're asking us to take a risk that I don't think that we're in a position to take right now.
Anyone else? Dennis, you have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
So that is pretty much the opinion of the board. If you want to explore the bonding thing or the surety, I'm sure Elizabeth will be happy to listen to whatever you come up with. And, or figure out how to do the half load. If you're starting April 15th, go to the half load as much as you can until its restrictions are off. So, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think it's best, since it came in as a written request, to have your direction in the form of a motion. And I think the motion would be to maintain road restrictions.
Someone want to make the motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Call for a vote.
Hold
All in
it.
favor?
Discussion?
Oops, discussion.
Do we have any city property that they could dump full loads on and take half loads out of there and bring them down to their shop? Is it, it's all used up on the corner, northeast corner?
You know, I don't even know what those, I don't even know what those road, I don't even know what that road condition is, you know what I mean, out there.
All right. I'm just thinking where the cement factory or cement place is right there. They could dump full loads there and take a half load out of there into the factory there. Might make some sense, I don't know, maybe it doesn't. Well, we can continue on with the vote
Any other
and they can talk about
discussion?
that if they want to do that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. All right.
Schaefer.
All right, everyone, let's go to
Truck's hauling full loads. Just a half.
public open forum. Is there anybody here for public open forum? Come up to the microphone, please. And give us your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm John Ernst. Address is 7162 167th Avenue. I'm here to talk about cleaning out our pond. And we got approval from Army Corps of Engineers, the DNR, Rice Creek Water District, State of Minnesota, and Anoka County. And now we're here to talk about driving on a dirt road after road restrictions are off. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Wayne Jacobson. I'm a professional soil scientist, certified wetland delineator, owner of Jacobson Environmental, and I'm in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. I guess one of the things we wanted to go over with you is Elizabeth had written a letter to us March 1st, just outlining several concerns, 8 of them, with our project after we received, the approvals from the Corps of Engineers and Rice Creek Watershed District and the other agencies. And I wrote a letter back on March 8th responding to those concerns. And I'm not aware really of anything, based on that letter that we had not fully addressed. So we're just here tonight to address any other concerns you might have.
The city received an application for an excavation permit, and Mr. Art and I have had several discussions about this project, as this project is on a city road, and he intends to haul on this road and looking at the past and looking at overall for an excavation permit, we require several things to be submitted to the city. In this case, I did give them, I sent the information to the city engineer, and he and I put a list together because we felt the application was incomplete. So I did send the letter out and notify both property owners of the situation. Mr. Arndt came back and submitted some of the materials. I think I explained at the counter to Mr. Arndt that I don't, at the time, I didn't think our issues were adequately addressed, and I haven't had a chance to talk at a city staff meeting about the submission, as I do think this particular application needs a public hearing, because they are not keeping all of the materials on site, and I want to say there's 16,000 cubic yards that they'd like to haul off-site on a city road. And this road is a gravel road, and as Mr. Arndt indicated, they would like to, it's two property owners that's affected, and they would like to dig in wetland in order to create fish ponds, but they're not keeping the spoils on site. They're trucking the sand off site. And I don't know whether you indicated, because I don't recall whether you indicated how quickly you were going to, be hauling it. I don't recall all the details for the permit. So it's not fully processed yet, and a public hearing hasn't been established, and neither have we had an opportunity to review the materials that were submitted. However, I do know that the engineer did ask for a drainage plan, and the drainage plan is not in the materials that you submitted. I also asked for a map identifying some things, and although you gave me a black and white map, it didn't really identify what I needed to be identified. So I understand that you submitted, an application and one map, for the whole project, but that really didn't give the engineer and I an opportunity to review the project as a whole, because your explanation of the whole overall project was one paragraph long, which wasn't really directed to the city. It was directed to Rice Creek. And I realize that they have been through an 18-month process because they are digging a wetland. And so it is a long process. And I realize they're at the end of the road, and this generally does happen to me. They get to the end of the road, and the 60 days or 90 days that it takes to review the application seems like a long time after 18 months. So I understand that. But in the past, we've looked at these operations when we've had hauling, and our ordinance says that we don't have commercial hauling or hauling for a profit happening on city roads. And Mr. Arndt, I have had this discussion about hauling, essentially mining, and then hauling on city roads. So there is this question as to, because there isn't a variance process, as to whether or not you are going to allow them to haul 16,000 cubic yards on, is it 167th?
Yeah,
167th, to Potomac, correct? Potomac?
Yeah.
Potomac.
So
It is about, I think it's less than a quarter mile. You indicated it was a quarter mile, but I think there's only 3 houses between mine and Rich Kovash's and the end of the road.
Okay.
There's only 3 houses in between.
I just wanted to quickly respond. I think it certainly probably would be a benefit to have a public hearing and to be able to answer questions fully the way we've done with the agencies. And one of the reasons that we're in the position where we are, where we're going to be hauling off all the material immediately, is because some of the agencies, what they would like to see with the project, so there isn't any sedimentation or anything going on with erosion control with regard to the project. They were very approving of the project when we explained how we were going to perform it. And I apologize, Elizabeth, if you didn't get our color maps. You know, we're going to go ahead and provide them, you know, again, if we need to. But again, I think that's probably appropriate to have a public hearing and be able to explain everything in detail. It is a very natural resource friendly project, and it is, these two ponds were actually dug out years ago. So we have a good idea that we're going to be successful in every way. It's just that, you know, we needed to follow all the guidelines that the agencies had. And we actually met personally with the Corps of Engineers and explained to them that Mr. Arndt's construction operation actually had a lot of natural resource project experience. So that was very satisfying to the Corps.
Yeah, we're not trying to open up a gravel pit or a black dirt pit. We just want to clean out the pond. And that's all we were after.
How many truckloads is that?
I can't estimate exactly how many truckloads,
16,000 cubic feet?
yards.
Yards.
1,100, 1,200.
1,200 trucks? And where is the sand going to?
It'll be to a project that needs it. I don't know which one, but wherever we get their approval, then I can decide which project would need it.
And there's nowhere to spread it out on your property?
No, the watershed and the Army Corps of Engineers wanted it loaded right directly from the pond out and hauled off site.
And one of the purposes of the project was to create enough depth in the ponds to actually have a fish pond. So there has to be a certain amount of depth so that winter oxygen depletion doesn't occur in the pond. So that was one of the thoughts from the get-go on the project, is that, you know, we wanted to design something that was going to be fish-friendly, not just digging out a pond. And then one of the concerns of the agencies also was, well, how is this going to affect the overall ecology of the area? Was it going to be wildlife friendly? And based on what the habitat is there now, and then how the operation was going to be performed, they all agreed that this would be something that wouldn't be harmful in any way. It would be something that would be sustainable.
So what do they do if you go back and tell them you can't haul it because the ordinances don't allow it?
Well, then I wasted 2.5 years and a lot of money.
But are they really going to stop you, or are they going to?
No, the other agencies all agreed.
Mr. Mayor and Council, maybe I can provide some context for you. We had a long project on 181st. It was described as John's Black Dirt, and I think there's some residents here are very interested in that project and how it finally came to closure. But in any event, the council at that time then made our mining regulations much more strict as a result of the experience of hauling on residential streets and how disruptive that was to the residents. And so while we can take in an application that meets the requirements, and that's what Elizabeth has been talking about, meeting those application requirements, you will be faced with a tougher question when that application works its way through the hearing process and to you, whether or not there has to be some suspension or change in our rules to allow this to happen, because otherwise it simply can't happen on city streets, on residential streets. I want to be clear that commercial streets or county roads, it could happen, but not on residential streets based on that experience of 181st Street. So that would take a pretty significant discussion about a code change or whether in some case there could be a suspension of that rule.
But wasn't this code enacted because of, to make sure John's Black Dirt situation doesn't happen again?
Yes, that was the idea behind it.
So you guys kind of got the cart before the horse. Before you went to the agency.
Actually, we started this project back in 2007, before this law was into effect.
And that may be the case. It's a fairly recent change, I think,
It was, it wasn't in 2007, it was in 20, I want to say it was late 2017, and we were already discussing, because we had already been through the process of John's Black Dirt, and I think you and I had a conversation. I said, I understand you're doing this project, but, you know what I mean, the code is most likely going to change, and for hauling purposes. And so I think even then, we talked briefly about whether or not you were going to have to keep materials on the property. And I know we had many subsequent conversations when you were going through the process about the possibility of not being able to haul on the road. So I knew that there was this question mark as to what was going to happen, because this is kind of, I realize you have a personal project that's important to you, and you want to do that. And then we have this issue about hauling, and it's not just 100 trucks, it's 1,200 trucks. So it's my intention to bring this back to the engineer.
And it has to go through a hearing.
It has to go through a public hearing.
We'll talk then,
right.
after then.
I guess one of the other aspects of it is that, yeah, we do have some documentation from 2007 from the Corps of Engineers where we did begin the project, and we were directed, to work south of 167th on Mr. Arndt's property back then. And so that's kind of when this thing started. And I think John just, got into seriously, trying to put the project together as Elizabeth indicated, in 2017. But the other thing with, the concerns about the road is that Mr. Arndt's very capable, and his company is, in, I guess, regrading or repairing gravel roads. And so that gravel road stretch on 167th, while there would be some hauling, I think it probably could be, done in a way that would be safe, and then, there'd be great potential, to make sure that road was
Maintained.
right.
So what's the next step? Come back and schedule your hearing, Elizabeth, or do you need
So-
more time or more facts, or what?
So at this point, I wrote a letter indicating that I felt that the application was incomplete based on the engineer and my review of the initial application that was submitted. Mr. Art then, submitted materials that we haven't had an opportunity to address. So what happens is until the application is complete, we don't schedule a public hearing. And in this case, I understand that Wayne feels that what he submitted was sufficient. And as I indicated to Mr. Arndt at the counter, the engineer requested temporary grading and drainage plans, and I did not see those submitted, but I will review them with the city engineer, what was submitted to us, and make sure that my determination that it was not a drainage plan is correct, and then we'll have to work with the applicants in order to complete the application, and then we will set the hearing.
So you understand what she's looking
Yep.
for?
Yes.
Yeah, we certainly can put a one-page memo with a simplified drainage plan. It's not a hard thing with what we're planning on doing.
And will that give you what you want, or what exactly?
Our concern, I think, was more about, we anticipate that you were going to do some dewatering activities on the property.
Correct.
And we were concerned, because we have some experience with dewatering, on how that affects wells in the immediate area or other ponds in the immediate area. And so it was more, you know what I mean, there's a little bit more to the drainage on how it would affect other properties and such. And so there really wasn't a narrative on how all of that was going to be, you know what I mean, addressed.
Well, I contacted Blake Dewatering. I talked to John Williams. We worked with him several times. And they put down a sand point 20 feet deep, and it sucks the water down about 16 feet. I've contacted 2 well companies. They both told me it would not affect anybody's well. It will not affect anybody's property.
And I think that's a really good, you know what I mean, explanation, except it wasn't in the application. It's not written down.
We had it in the application, but it was briefly, and we can probably expand on that. I agree.
Well, get her what she needs if
Right.
you want to move forward.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're wasting our time here.
Sure.
All right, anybody?
Question?
Yes.
It's just for my curiosity, you putting in a pond for fish.
Correct.
What's your purpose, just for private fishing or
Yes.
for private entertainment?
Yep.
Good, I just had to figure out why you spend that much time just to fish with all the lakes around. You know.
Well, just to improve the yard too,
Okay, well, that's a good enough reason, thank you.
so
What's the acreage of your lake, roughly?
it'll be roughly 2.8 acres.
You know, in the best interest of time, because I'm anticipating that you want to get your project underway, what we'll do is, the engineer and I will schedule a meeting, maybe have you come in, you know, you heard what we had to say tonight, maybe you can bring some materials. We'll talk through your application to make sure we're on the same page. Nobody likes trading all these letters back and forth, so that we can get your application complete and get you going.
Sounds very good.
Thank you. Yep. Anyone else for public open forum? If not, let's move on to number 13, discussion and direction of legislature bills, pages 22 to 25. Elizabeth, will you explain what this all means to us?
Yep. So on page 22 and page 23, we received letters from state representatives about their bills and whether or not the city would support them. The first one is a bill that would reform local government aid. When we were a township, we were not eligible for local government aid. When we incorporated, we were informed that we were not eligible for local government aid. So the city of Columbus is one of those cities that they identify as, there are 95 cities in the state of Minnesota not receiving LGA, which is local government aid. So I understand they would like to make a more equitable system. In other words, if they're going to have local government aid, it should be a program that is available to all cities. And so I understand what the bill is what they're striving for, but they're also asking for our support. And the letter is asking for your support for this bill because they feel that there wouldn't be an appropriation to the city of about $90,000. And while I look at this, and in the big picture, I look at this and say, it's great, and I think if there's equity in the system, I think that's a good way to go, to be fair to all. My very first question is where you're going to get this pot of money in order to fund 95 new cities with local government aid. Having said that, we don't want to be left out, though, either. If they do find the funding, we generally want to be a part of the funding pool. So it is at your direction as to whether or not we write a letter of support that we wanted to be included in the local aid formula and supporting this bill, as we are a city that does not receive it today.
Counselor, have you got input? Where will they find this pot of money?
Well, generally, local government aid comes out of the general fund, so, not generally, always. And so it would be either a redistribution of the existing fund for local government aid, or it would be finding new resources. But I know back 15 or more years ago, we had another client city actually petition to be included in the formula. And, you know, for a number of years until the formula changed, they collected $200,000 a year. So it was a significant benefit for that city, about the same size as Columbus. So it's hard to say where the money comes from. I mean, it comes from, you know, taxpayers, right? So ultimately, but it seems to me, and we could, if you wanted to, we could look at closer at the bill. It seems to me that it's a redistribution of the existing funds. And usually you have, you know, big urban cities saying we have greater needs, and that's why we have so much LGA. And you have smaller cities without as much representation saying, you know, we're getting shorted on the formula. So this, without knowing the impetus for this bill, I would suspect that it's a number of small cities coming to this representative and saying, hey, you know, get us in the program. And, but we can certainly contact the representative's office and say, where's it going to come from? Is it a redistribution of existing monies, or are you trying to increase the size of the pot? If that would make a difference to you on whether you support it.
When do they want the support by?
You know, I think this is, anything at the legislature is very timely because, you know, I mean, as we get closer to the end of the session, you know, hearings are held, things are moved on. And so, again, we received the letter on March 8th, so I'm thinking they want a pretty quick response.
And they're through, I think, the first couple of committee deadlines, so they probably want a pretty quick response. And you could certainly condition your support and say, you know, we are supportive if it's a redistribution of existing monies and not an increase in revenue.
Are there strings attached, or is there any obligation by accepting the money?
It's pretty straightforward. I don't recall that there were strings attached. There's a funding formula, and the money comes from the state to the local units. There may be some conditions, but I don't think they're significant, unlike a block grant or something that can be very difficult to administer.
Got it, Denny?
Like free money, but where does it come from? You know?
Comes from your pocket.
That's it, that's
There
what
is
you
no
think.
such thing.
Sorry, we don't be the only one not on the bandwagon here, that's for sure. I say we support it.
Well, I have no problem. Do you have,
Make a motion.
do you need a motion or just a direction?
I think a motion would be appropriate since you're going on record as a body.
And then do it separate from the next one on page 23?
Yes, two separate items.
All right, do you want to make a motion, Jeff?
I'd like to make a motion to accept
No, you're going to direct me to write a letter.
direct Elizabeth to write a letter to support this initiative. Is there a number on it, or HF 2031, is that?
Yes. 2031.
Is there a second? Anyone?
A second.
All those in favor?
The discussion.
Whoop. Discussion.
Are we going to call somebody and ask them?
We can. I mean, it should be fairly easy to get the.
Why do we care?
I know it.
Why
I
do you
don't
care where
care.
it comes from?
No, I don't care. It's not our problem.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, it'd be nice to know. Anybody can look this up, right? Doesn't have to be you.
Yeah, exactly. There's reports online. If you just plug in this file number, you'll get the staff summary of this bill.
And what is the file number again? Sorry.
It's in the letter, House File 2031.
Okay, look it up, Shelley. You can make a report. All right. Okay, so we've had a motion, we've had discussion. Anybody else have anything to say? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to it? All right, next page. It's another one.
The next really wasn't, it's not a letter, it's just an alert, and I receive these from time to time when there's legislation happening, and they just, you know, whether it comes from the League of the Cities or other smaller entities that are following certain bills. And this one, it's just a legislative alert, alerting to you that there is this bill, and it's talking about street maintenance money, and the league is saying if we wanted to support it, then we would either call or write our legislators or Ann Finn and indicate where we sit with this bill, whether we support it or we don't support it. In this case, they're asking for support.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a result of the Woodbury case where they struck down Woodbury's road fees because there was no authority for road fees. And so the response of some cities has been to say, let's go get, you know, road fee authority.
And how does that, what opinion should Columbus take?
Well, Mr. Mayor, full disclosure, our firm challenged the road fee, so I want to be clear about that. So I may be a little biased. What I will say is that in Columbus, we have used Chapter 429 special assessments for as long as I can remember. And so the question would be, if you want to be able to, as part of a development agreement, charge developers over and above, what they put into their subdivision. If you want to be able to charge them for roads, going out a half mile or 2 miles, you would need this authority to do that. So if that's something you think that would be helpful in your, development scenarios, then you could support this bill. If you think that you have had sufficient funding for subdivisions and whatnot through Chapter 429 or through direct negotiation, then that would be a reason that you wouldn't necessarily support the bill. But it's certainly, let me give you an example. Under the utility or statutes, you have authority to charge utility fees, and you don't have that for roads. So the argument of the cities is, well, legislature, give us that authority, and then we can charge these impact fees on developers. Now, it would be city by city, so the question would be, if Blaine charges it and you don't, are you at a competitive advantage or disadvantage? If you charge it and Hugo doesn't, does that somehow change the mix? Every city uses special assessment financing. And so that's kind of a level playing field. If you decide to put on road fees, does that change anything? I mean, Egan and Woodbury put them on, but they were also, rapidly developing cities, and that was their justification.
I have a question. When it says that it doesn't prohibit cities from collecting fees from tax-exempt properties, are TIF properties tax-exempt? Or are they just talking about nonprofits?
They're talking about nonprofits
Okay.
and charitable institutions.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's for, there'd be blacktopping a street in front of the church and the library. They can ask them to pay their fair share.
Right.
That was all discussion in the cities a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's responding to another case in St. Paul where for years they were charging churches and institutions and hospitals assessments, and the court said, no, that's like a tax, and so that was struck down. So then all those cities that were charging those institutions had to figure out how they were going to pay for the lack of being able to assess them. So they're saying that this authority would be clear that they could charge nonprofits and exempts.
So are they asking us, Elizabeth, for any action or just to be aware of it?
It's an actual alert, basically alerting you that this bill is out there, and then if you wanted to support it, you would call your legislators. A lot of times, they'll just take surveys, and you'll go out on their sites, and they'll say, where's the survey? Check yes if you support it. If you don't, then you check no. But in this particular case, they said, I think they just said it was 7 letters.
So anyone, we can do it individually, correct? If anyone's interested, send me your letter. It's Senate File 1271. All right. Now on to something really exciting. We've got the Sunrise, hang on, the Sunrise 2020 Water Maintenance Ordinance Budget, pages 26 and page 27 of your notes. So who wants to talk about it? Who was at the meeting?
Shelley and I were at it.
Ed, how was it?
Enlightening.
Uh,
I received an email from Jamie Sherborne indicating that I was to bring this to the city council prior to May 1st to approve the 2020 budget for the Sunrise Water Maintenance Organization.
So our total down on the bottom, grand total was $9,753, plus we had $1,500.
We generally had then this time it'll probably be $2,000 for administrative cost because we serve as the local government unit for the Wetland Conservation Act and other things that we have to do on behalf of Sunrise to administer stormwater management program.
So, I mean, it's not very much money, and they have it broken down here so you can see how they spend it. I think when we were at the meeting, I think both, I won't speak for you, Shelley. It was, the enlightening part was how much time and money they spend on these CARP studies on, and the issue is that they're in lakes that aren't even in Columbus, so they're not really benefiting us. That said, I think we have an obligation to support this organization, and how they spend their money is part of what we get to vote on when we're there. But that's what the majority wanted to do. So I don't know, I mean, you could certainly bring back concerns with the budget, but we still have to participate and support them, correct?
We, my understanding is that this group would approve the budget, and then it goes back to the Sunrise Board, and then once you ratify it, then that's what we levy.
Right. But I mean, there's not an opt-out.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm
no.
saying.
That's what I
There
asked.
is,
That was my, if we can't opt out, we're kind of like, this is the budget. That's what they voted.
there is not an opt-out program for this.
So,
So then what, we need a motion to accept it or just
Approve it.
approve it? Who wants to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
The Sunrise 2020 budget. We've heard a second. Is there more discussion, anyone?
You have some history. Are we representing it correctly?
You're doing a real good job. I realize what you say. I thought to me, it was a total waste of time. But you have to go, you have to state requires you to be part of it. I'm glad both you girls are getting enthused about it.
We're learning a lot about carps.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that you can kill them with clove oil?
I didn't know that.
Y'all know it now.
All right, we've had a motion and a second. Everybody's all right? Let's call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
it passes. Okay, now we're up to letter D. Dennis, would you like to start in on this?
Sure, this is the project we're talking about is extending sanitary sewer and water main up the future alignment of Hornsby Street in the northeast quadrant. We had talked at one point about combining it with the Hornsby Street project itself, but it makes sense for the schedule and different funding pots to advance them separately. So this project is just, again, extending sanitary sewer and water main for future development in the northeast quadrant. And I think I just provided one plan sheet out of the 10. I have a full set of plans with me. That in your additions, A9 and A10 are a resolution and an advertisement for bids. The resolution is asking you to approve the plans and specifications and order advertisement for bids. Was there a plan sheet, Elizabeth? In the,
You want me to put,
sure. Good. It should be the 11 by 17, black and white.
it's not, it's
You
not.
put it up on the overhead.
The big one. There it is.
So this is one of the plan sheets in the set of 10 plan sheets that make up the entire set of construction drawings. This being the main one that shows the actual sewer and water horizontal alignment and profiles. So It's a little bit busy because on this copy, we turned on the potential future development, so you can see how it ties in. The plan sheet in the actual construction drawings, we turned that off, so it's not confusing to the contractor. But what you see is, this is 97, and this is future Hornsby to the north. At about this point, the alignment gets back onto existing Hornsby. And sanitary sewer and water main currently exists. It comes down along the north side and ends right about in this location. We're going to be taking the sewer and the water and extending it up the new alignment of Hornsby to close to the north end of the city property. The construction costs and the engineering, the project costs, we had a hearing last summer. This will be assessed to the part of the assessments for the future development. So,
And this is going to follow the proposed road.
yep. So it'll come in, we'd like to get, if it's approved tonight, anticipate construction June, July, and then the roadway project, if we can get all the permits and approvals to be under construction, July or August to the end of the year.
We should typically put the road in first?
Nope, you got to put the utilities in first, sewer and water especially, then the road and storm sewer will come in afterwards because it's shallower. The storm sewer goes over top of some of the sanitary sewer and water main.
And so when is it all completed? By freeze-up or not?
That's the intent for the utilities and the roadway to be done by November. So again, at this point, looking for you to approve a resolution to approve the plans and specs and authorize us to go out for bids. And then we would come back with, we'd put it out for bids, open bids in 3 weeks, and then bring those bids back to the second meeting in April for your approval.
What's the resolution number?
1906. Jesse, is that the next one after the 3 that we did in the consent agenda? Or the 2 in the consent agenda?
2 in the consent agenda.
Okay.
So yes. 2 in the consent agenda are 1904 and 1905.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 1906, approving plans and specs and ordering advertisement for bids.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, go for it.
All ahead?
Anything else from you?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, let's do number 16, the attorney report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. In your packets are a recent amendment of the road restrictions and a proposed amendment that would clarify a couple points. Again, I think based on the prior item, I should clarify that, again, the road restrictions that have been placed by the Public Works Director are based on statute, and so that authority does exist whether or not you do anything with this ordinance. The first item is the seasonal weight restrictions, and this basically matches state law. It's shifting back to a 5-ton standard. There was some discussion when this was adopted. It was kind of discussion on the fly, I think several months ago, and it got moved from a 5-ton to a 7-ton. I think the direction is that the 5-ton is the appropriate direction, and I believe there's some discussion at this council that we bring back this ordinance. In addition to that seasonal authority, there's also emergency weight restrictions that can go in place, and this is that delegation. It's been delegated to the Public Works Superintendent for years, but this puts it in ordinance, so it's clear that it's a delegation of authority from the council to the superintendent. And that, of course, is because that's an emergency issue. You want the Public Works staff to be able to implement that without having to come to the council. And then finally, C is just a restatement of the commercial vehicle restrictions that are already part of the ordinance, and that's why you don't see any underlining or strike through.
Some clarifications that Jim and I talked about in paragraph A. We'd like to add language that says, after 5 tons per axle, stating that on any city road. Because right now it says any road. And Bill, I don't know if we have to clarify that it's a city road, but we have,
That's fine. I think that's helpful. So as compared to county roads, which we don't regulate.
correct. And then also, under B, that Jim only has authority over city roads. So it says upon any city road in the second sentence in the middle.
On any road, so it'd add city there too. Okay?
Our other question that we talked about is when we look at the language in C, it would be our understanding as far as the staff level that we would be posting a no truck route sign, and then there would be an added sign underneath that said, accept local deliveries. That's correct? It's not a no hauling route, it's a no truck route.
Right.
And then there was a further question by council member, exactly what does that mean? In other words, when Jim and I looked at it, we anticipated this sign saying no truck route, and let's take Howard Lake for instance. Howard Lake would be post no truck route except local deliveries, and in our understanding, it would be no local deliveries to Iverson or Garrick Street. And they were thinking, well, perhaps a local delivery would be Kettle River Boulevard.
Yeah.
Because Howard Lake connects with Kettle River Boulevard. And so I wasn't quite sure where do you put the limits on that?
But I think the idea with the local delivery is it terminates somewhere within that radius, so coming from that route. So it's not a pass-through, it's not going through to Forest Lake, it's not going through to some other location, it's terminating somewhere nearby the restriction. So that would be the general understanding, but if there's something more you want added, we can. Does that help clarify the question? Or
It
make
could.
it
I
muddier?
was thinking they could say local deliveries just about anywhere, because they're all local, basically. They're all, I'm thinking about Knife River or whatever, and they pour cement all over Columbus or Lionel Lakes, and they could say it's local. I don't know, maybe that's not the way it works, so.
Well, I think that restriction came up as a result of the concern about the asphalt plant and the local, or the hauling over 147th. And then Howard Lake came up after that in the same discussion, said, well, what about Howard Lake? So again, I think it was the concern, the section C concern was a lot of trucks coming through hauling on local streets. I don't think there was a big concern about someone delivering mattresses or even pouring a concrete driveway. So I don't know if there's more we have to put in the ordinance, but our understanding, if someone calls in and says, well, what does that mean? It would mean that someone taking a local delivery, off of this road would be fine. The local delivery of furniture, of pouring a driveway, building a house,
And you think the wording covers that good enough?
We do until a problem arises that we haven't thought of, and then, again, we're happy to, amend this either tonight or otherwise in response to the concerns.
Jeff, are you concerned that it could be any street within Columbus and that would be considered local?
I think local is kind of up to, they could say local is Lionel Lakes even. It's a local stop.
So if you look at C2, it's spelled out there, said restrictions shall not apply to municipal vehicles, public safety vehicles, garbage or recycling vehicles while on their collection routes, school buses, or delivery of services to a residential or business address accessed from the posted road. So that's clear. We just can't put that all on a sign.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, except local deliveries would be the indication that there's an exception, and if somebody who wants to know what that means, they can call City Hall and say, well, I don't quite understand what that, because we couldn't post that whole paragraph.
All right, would someone like to make the motion?
Ordinance number?
Ordinance, yeah, 1901.
Oh, first one of the
Yeah,
season.
Sorry.
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 1901.
Second.
Any more discussion on it, anyone?
Just that it would be with those two additions that Elizabeth pointed out.
Yeah. If not, hearing anything, let's call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Mr. Mayor, the next two items can be deferred because we do not have a signed petition and waiver. So rather than take up time explaining what that is, if you don't mind, we would defer it until we have that in hand.
Good. Then we'll be down on 17, the mayor and city council members report. Denny?
I've got nothing to report.
Janet?
I have nothing.
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 What, you gonna talk about the sunrise? I don't know, the carp?
Carp sandwiches.
We didn't go in those last 2 weeks.
Pub-
wait
Public
till next time.
Information Coordinator.
No report.
What? Elizabeth, city administrator's report?
No report.
Oh, good.
Holy smokes.
Give you a lengthy one.
Then the only thing would be next week will be our city council workshop on 4/3/19 at 4 to 6 p.m. Planning Commission after that. The calendar of meetings, the whole calendar is on the back, everybody. And I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Anyone opposed, or all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Not opposed.
You want to wait? You want to hang around, right?
Oh, sorry.